Memoirs of a Geisha is a historical fiction novel written by American author Arthur Golden, published in 1997. Told in first-person perspective, the novel tells the story of Sayuri and the many obstacles she faces on her journey to become a geisha during the 1930s and 1940s in Japan. Hello and welcome to my video looking at Arthur Golden's novel, Memoirs of a Geisha. Plot summary. In 1929, 9-year-old Chiyo is living in a small fishing village in western Japan with her parents and older sister. Chiyo has a sharp and creative mind, and her enchanting grey eyes are one of her most remarkable features. Chiyo's mother is dying of cancer, and her withdrawn and grief-stricken father is very old. The family are poor, and due to their unfortunate circumstances, Chiyo's father strikes a deal with the wealthy Mr. Tanaka, agreeing to sell his daughters to strangers in distant Kyoto. After a distressing 13-hour train journey, the young girls arrive in Kyoto before being separated. Chiyo is sent to an okiya, which is a boarding house for geisha, while she later discovers that her sister has been sent to an establishment for prostitutes. It's important to point out that there are some key cultural understandings and definitions surrounding geisha and their role in Japanese society in the early 20th century. While there is undoubtedly a sexual element to the role of a geisha, particularly when a young girl comes of age, these women were seen as sophisticated entertainers. Geisha were women who embodied elements of cultural tradition such as fashion, dance, musical performance, erudite conversation, and tea ceremony. The novel makes a key distinction between prostitution and the role of a geisha. As Chiyo settles into her new life, she begins working as a maid at the okiya. The other women living at the okiya include the greedy and materialistic mother, who runs the okiya, Auntie, who acts as a parental figure for Chiyo, and the beautiful yet incredibly cruel Hatsumomo. Hatsumomo torments Chiyo, constantly belittles her, and strategically frames her for theft, which earns Chiyo distrust and disdain from mother. It's likely that Hatsumomo feels threatened by Chiyo, with her emerging beauty and sharp mind, and this fuels her cruelty towards Chiyo. Another young girl working as a maid at the okiya is affectionately known as Pumpkin. Not long after Chiyo's arrival, Pumpkin begins her training as a geisha. A few months after arriving at the okiya, Chiyo tries to run away, but in the process she falls off the roof and breaks her arm. Chiyo is beaten by Auntie for her disobedience, and Mother ceases any plans to pay for Chiyo's geisha training because she's seen as a financial liability. For the next 2 years, Chiyo accepts her fate and works diligently as a maid. Under the surface, Chiyo is still dealing with the trauma of being torn from her family and separated from her sister. Meanwhile, she is also jealous of Pumpkin and her geisha training. While on an errand one day, Chiyo realizes that her own life lacks purpose and direction, while also contemplating her grief for the past. Chiyo sits by a stream and begins to cry before a handsome man, known as the chairman, comforts her. The chairman gives her a handkerchief to wipe her tears and says some kind words to her. This becomes a key moment in Chiyo's life, and it triggers her personal resolve to become a geisha. Chiyo wants to increase her standing in the world so that she can surround herself with men like the chairman, but she also wants to take charge of the direction her life takes, rather than remain a victim of circumstance. Not long after this encounter with the chairman, a geisha named Mameha arrives at the okiya and takes notice of Chiyo's emerging beauty. Mameha convinces Mother to reinvest in Chiyo's geisha training, agreeing to take her on as an apprentice or little sister upon her graduation. Mother sees an opportunity to make money, and she agrees. Chiyo thinks that Mameha is only taking her on as an apprentice because she and Hatsumomo are bitter rivals, and that Mameha sees an opportunity to infuriate her. For the next 2 years, Chiyo undertakes geisha training before being officially presented as an apprentice geisha. Following geisha tradition, upon her graduation, Chiyo adopts her new name, Sayuri. At a sumo wrestling event, Mameha introduces Sayuri to 2 wealthy businessmen who run an electric company together, Nobu and the chairman, the same man who had comforted her years ago. Sayuri had kept the handkerchief he'd given her for all those years, retaining it as a symbol of her resolve to change her life's direction. The handkerchief was also a token of her desire to be romantically involved with this kind of stranger. To Sayuri's disappointment, Mameha insists that she should instead cultivate a relationship with the intellectual but emotionally cold and distant Nobu. Mameha's plan to make Sayuri a success as a geisha involved generating excitement about her reputation. If she could pit multiple wealthy businessmen against one another in a bidding war for Sayuri's mizoage, the ceremonial taking of a young geisha's virginity, this would increase Sayuri's reputation as a highly coveted geisha. The plan is a success, And ultimately, the weird and eccentric Dr. Crab outbids the other wealthy men, paying a record amount for Sayuri's mizuwage. Seeing Sayuri's reputation blossom and her profitability increase, Mother decides to adopt Sayuri, meaning that she will one day inherit the Okiya and its assets. This decision infuriates Hatsumomo and upsets Pumpkin, as they both expected that they were in line for this financial reward. Over the following few years, Nobu continues to request Sayuri's presence at events for his electric company. While Sayuri respects Nobu and values his friendship and his intellect, she does not want a romantic relationship with him. She still longs for the affection of the chairman. But seeing as the two men are business partners and personal friends, the likelihood of this happening for Sayuri is lessening. When World War II breaks out, the government closes down the Geisha district so that the women can more actively contribute to the war effort. Nobu uses his influence to find Sayuri a safe and relatively easy job sewing parachutes in a village outside of Kyoto. After the war, Nobu finds Sayuri and asks for her help to entertain a Japanese businessman named Sato. In the film adaptation, Sato's character is replaced by a US military general, but the source of conflict remains fairly similar. The US government wants to seize Nobu's company, but Sato is able to use his connections to stop this from happening. Nobu despises the man, but wants to see his electric company continue. Over the next year, Sayuri, Mameha, and Pumpkin meet regularly with Sato, Nobu, and the chairman at local tea houses, providing entertainment for the businessmen. Sato successfully manages to stop the Americans from bankrupting the company. With the business secure, Nobu proposes himself as Sayuri's Dana, a patron who lavishes expensive gifts on a geisha in exchange for sexual privileges, similar to what we in the West would categorize as a mistress. Sayuri reluctantly agrees, wishing she could be with the chairman instead. To celebrate the proposal, the group travels to an island for a vacation. Sayuri realizes that if she could dishonor herself, that perhaps Nobu would break off their engagement. She plans to seduce Sato and have Nobu stumble across them. Sayuri asks for Pumpkin's help, arranging for her to bring Nobu to a nearby abandoned theatre, where she would be caught being intimate with Sato. But due to her deep-seated jealousy, Pumpkin instead brings the chairman. The chairman witnesses Sayuri's dishonor, which leaves her feeling crushed and despondent. After hearing the news, Nobu becomes enraged and breaks off his engagement with Sayuri. A few days after returning to Kyoto, Sayuri receives an invitation to meet the chairman at a tea house. The chairman confesses that he fell in love with Sayuri the moment he saw her crying by the stream as a young girl. Sayuri is shocked that the chairman even remembers her. The chairman goes on to confess that he had approached Mameha all those years ago, requesting that she train Sayuri as a geisha. Sayuri responds, saying that she only slept with Sato to break off the engagement with Nobu, in the hope that she may one day have the chairman as her Dana. Overcome with emotion, the pair begin to kiss. The chairman becomes Sayuri's Dana, and she gives birth to the chairman's son. The three of them eventually immigrate to New York, where Sayuri runs her own successful business, a Japanese tea house. Memoirs of a Geisha contains themes of beauty versus truth, coming of age, and destiny versus self-determination. The story is beautifully written, with an incredibly intriguing hero's journey, and it manages to transport the reader into the world of a young Japanese woman living through the Great Depression and World War II in the first half of the 20th century. Sayuri's character embodies an unyielding strength. She makes a conscious decision time and again to not simply remain a victim of circumstance. Sayuri's wit and personable demeanour are traits she capitalises on to take charge of the direction her life takes. At times, Sayuri wrestles with the idea of destiny and its paradoxical relationship with self-determination. Ultimately, her tenacity and internal strength forge her a better existence. I hope this video has been helpful and educational in some way, and if you enjoyed it, please let me know in the comments below. If there are any other books or plot summaries you'd like me to cover on this channel, please let me know.